Hello, hello, hello. I am your host, OCL, and welcome back to One Century Later. Today, we'll be taking a look at all events from July 20th to July 26th, 1925. As with last week, all of my sources are in the description down below. Monday, July 20th, 1925. Rebels from the Jabal Druze state in the French Mandate of Syria attacked and captured the French garrisons in Salkhad. Sultan Pasha al-Atrash and his forces entered the city and called the citizens to arms against the 40 French soldiers, officers, and government employees that were stationed there. The French nationals in the city quickly surrendered and the rebels set fire to the French government buildings. Also on this day, the Treaty of Nettuno was signed between Italy and Yugoslavia. The treaty allowed Italians to travel freely into Dalmatia in the coastal region of what is modern-day Croatia. This treaty would be held up in the Yugoslav parliament as members of the Croatian Peasant Party rejected the treaty, and it would not be ratified until 1928. This treaty was an addition to the Treaty of Rome, signed between the two nations in January of 1924. Tuesday, July 21st, 1925. The Scopes trial ended with John Scopes being found guilty of violating Tennessee's Butler Act, an act which made it illegal to teach evolution in the Tennessee public school system. Scopes was fined $100, which both the prosecution's lawyer, William Bryan, and the defense, the American Civil Liberties Union, offered to pay for him. Also on this day, the USSR, through a resolution by the Council of People's Commissars, adopted the metric system and abolished their other forms of measurement. Wednesday, July 22nd, 1925. The Battle of Al-Ghafel began in the French Mandate of Syria as members of the Druze rebel forces surrounded and ambushed a French column that was on its way to Salkhad and took a rest in Al-Kafir. On July 18th, members of the Druze rebel forces had shot down a French reconnaissance plane and were keeping 2 of the soldiers on board as hostages. The French column was attempting to find and free the hostages. The battle lasted 30 minutes and was a decisive Druze victory, with 111 of the 174 members of the French column dying in battle. Thursday, July 23rd, 1925. Nothing of historical precedent happened on this day. Friday, July 24th, 1925. 8-year-old Arthur Buddy Schumacher was kidnapped and murdered in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. The last known sighting of him occurred when he and his friends were seen running from a man chasing them. His body wouldn't be discovered until September 12th. While multiple suspects were interrogated, no arrests were made, and 100 years later, the crime remains unsolved. Saturday, July 25th, 1925. The Temporary Slavery Commission filed a report to the League of Nations recommending that all slavery and slave trade should be made illegal, that all slave trade by sea should be considered piracy, that escaped slaves should be entitled to protection, and that slave raids should be criminalized. This report laid the foundation for the League of Nations 1926 Slavery Convention. Sunday, July 26th, 1925. A long-term conflict between Grigory Grachov and his neighbors in the town of Ivankovo in the Soviet Union turned deadly when Grachov set fire to his neighbor's house. When Vladimir Lenin abolished private property in 1917 and redistributed the land amongst the peasants of the Soviet Union, Grachov believed he hadn't been given his fair share of land and became angry at his neighbors. Grachov waited until his neighbors returned to put out the fire before ambushing and opening fire on them, killing 11 and wounding 8. All but one of the 14 houses in Ivankovo were destroyed in the fire. Grachov fled the scene but was later caught and arrested. And that is all. See you next week for all events from Monday, July 27th, 1925 Sunday, August 2nd, 1925.